His name was James. By 31, he had everything that was supposed to matter. An engineering degree, a master's in finance from a top university, a six-figure salary, a company car, a LinkedIn profile full of endorsements. From the outside, James looked like someone who had figured it out. He had not figured it out. Because every month, without fail, James reached the last week with almost nothing left in his account. Not because of a crisis, not because of debt, not because of some unexpected expense that blindsided him, just nothing. Spent. Gone. And the part that haunted him most was this: he couldn't explain it. He was the guy people called when they had a math problem. He understood compound interest, he could read a balance sheet, he knew intellectually exactly what he was supposed to do with money. He just couldn't do it. This video is about why that happens, and why, if you're watching this, there's a real chance it's happening to you too. Let's start with a fact that most financial educators don't want to lead with. Being smart has almost nothing to do with being wealthy. I know that sounds wrong. We've been told the opposite our entire lives. Study hard, get a good job, earn more, save more. The formula seems obvious. And yet, a study that tracked over 10,000 people across 2 decades found that IQ score had almost zero correlation with net worth. Zero. Researchers controlled for income, education, background. It didn't matter. The people with the highest IQs were not the wealthiest, not even close. So the question becomes, if intelligence doesn't predict wealth, what does? The answer isn't a strategy. It's not a budgeting method or an investment vehicle or a side hustle. It's something far less tangible and far more powerful. It's your relationship with money, the invisible story running in the background of every financial decision you make. The story that tells you what money means, whether you deserve it, how safe it is to have it, and whether people like you are even allowed to be wealthy. Most of us never wrote that story. We inherited it from our parents, from the houses we grew up in, from the silences at the dinner table when money was tight and nobody talked about it. And here's the part that changes everything. That story doesn't update automatically when your income goes up. It stays exactly where it was written, in the past, and it runs your financial life from there, whether you know it or not. James didn't know it. For most of his adult life, he thought his problem was discipline. It wasn't discipline. It was something much older than that. James grew up in a working-class family in a mid-sized city. His father worked in a factory. His mother cleaned offices on weekends. They weren't poor by every measure. They had a house, food on the table, heat in winter. But money in that house was always a source of stress, always discussed in terms of what they couldn't afford, never in terms of what was possible. The message James absorbed, without anyone ever saying it out loud, was simple. Money is something that runs out. Money is something you worry about. Money is not something people like us ever quite get right. He carried that message with him, quietly, invisibly, all the way through school, all the way through his degrees, all the way to his first real paycheck. That paycheck was $3,200 after taxes. He remembers the exact moment it hit his account. He was sitting in his car in a parking lot, phone in hand, staring at the number. His hands were actually shaking. And then something shifted inside him, something he didn't have words for at the time. Spend it, now, before it disappears, before something goes wrong, before it gets taken away somehow. Within 2 weeks, $2,100 was gone. New shoes, dinners out every night, a watch he'd been eyeing for years. Nothing irresponsible, nothing he couldn't justify, just everything he'd always wanted and told himself he couldn't have. He told himself, next month I'll save more. Next month came, same story. The raises didn't help. If anything, they made it worse. By 34, James was earning $85,000 a year, 2 promotions, stock options, a reputation in his company as someone going places. His lifestyle had quietly expanded to meet every single dollar of that income. Nicer apartment, a leased car instead of a used one, gym membership he used 3 times, streaming services he forgot he was paying for, rounds of drinks he insisted on picking up because it felt good to be the person who could. He earned twice what he did at 25. His savings account showed $0.
His colleagues assumed he was quietly building wealth somewhere. He assumed the same. He just never actually checked. Then, one Tuesday morning, his car broke down on the highway. The mechanic called with the bill, $1,800. James sat in the waiting room and opened his banking app. Checking account, $340. Savings, nothing. He made $85,000 a year. He could not pay for a car repair. He sat there for a long time, and for the first time in his life, he didn't look for something to blame. Not the month, not the expenses, not bad timing. He asked himself the only question that actually mattered. What is actually wrong with me? Nothing was wrong with James. What was happening to him had a name. Psychologists call it the scarcity mindset, a mental framework that forms when, during your early life, resources feel unreliable or temporary. When you grow up in an environment where money is always tight, always stressful, always disappearing, your brain learns something. Not as a thought, not as a belief you can examine. Deep in the wiring, below conscious awareness. It learns things don't last. Safety doesn't last. What you have today will be gone tomorrow, so use it now. Enjoy it now. Don't save it for a future that might never feel safe anyway. This is not a character flaw. This is not laziness or weakness or poor discipline. This is your brain doing exactly what it was designed to do, protect you from the patterns of danger it learned in childhood. The problem is that the brain doesn't automatically update when your circumstances change. James's income changed, his environment changed, his adult life looked nothing like his childhood, but the wiring stayed the same. So every raise got spent, every bonus got absorbed, every windfall disappeared, because somewhere in the background, a part of James still believed that money was temporary and that he should use it before it vanished the way it always had. Here's the part that's hardest to see from the inside. The scarcity mindset doesn't feel like fear. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't say, I am a psychological pattern formed in childhood and I am now sabotaging your financial future. It feels like living. It feels like generosity. It feels like you've worked hard and you deserve to enjoy the money you've earned. It whispers, you only live once and life is short and you can always save more next month. It's convincing because it sounds like freedom, but what it's actually doing is keeping you exactly where you started. For James, the mechanic's waiting room was the moment that story stopped working. Not because he suddenly understood all of this, but because the gap between what he earned and what he had became impossible to ignore. And that gap, that honest, uncomfortable gap, was the beginning of something real. You can't rewire 20 years of mental programming in an afternoon. Anyone who tells you otherwise is selling something. But you can start interrupting the pattern. And that interruption, repeated consistently, is how the wiring changes over time. Here are 3 things James actually did. Not theories, not things he read in a book. Things he did, starting the week after that Tuesday morning. For 30 days, every time you spend money on something non-essential, you write down one word, just one. How did you feel in the moment before you bought it? Stressed, bored, anxious, excited, celebratory, lonely. You're not judging yourself. You're not trying to stop spending. You're just learning what your triggers are, because you cannot change a pattern you haven't seen clearly. Any non-essential purchase over $50, you wait 24 hours before buying it. That's it. You're not saying no, you're saying not yet. What this does is insert a gap between the impulse and the action, between the feeling and the spending. That gap is where conscious choice lives, And most of the time, 24 hours later, you won't even want it anymore. The emotion passed, the need dissolved, the purchase was never really about the thing. The day you get paid, before any bill, before any purchase, before anything, move a fixed amount into a separate account. Not a big amount, not an amount that feels heroic, an amount so small it barely stings. $30, $50, whatever is true for where you are right now. The amount is almost irrelevant. What you're actually doing is practicing a belief that your future self deserves resources, that you're allowed to have money that doesn't immediately disappear, that safety is something you can build, slowly, imperfectly, month by month. That belief, practiced repeatedly, is the beginning of a different story. James did all three, not perfectly, not without slipping, but consistently enough that something shifted. A year later, he had 4 months of expenses saved. Not because his income changed, because his relationship with money started to change. And the thing he says now, when he talks about that year, is that the hardest part wasn't the saving. It was accepting that the problem was never about money at all. It was about the story. If something in this video felt familiar, that's not an accident. This is one of the most common, most invisible, most unspoken patterns in personal finance, and it affects people at every income level. Next week, we go deeper into where these patterns come from, and specifically how childhood shapes the way you earn, spend, and think about money as an adult. Subscribe so you don't miss it, and if this resonated with someone you know, share it with them. Sometimes the most useful thing you can do for someone is hand them the words for something they've been feeling for years. I'll see you in the next one.